The sun blazed its farewell across the sky as the station wagon rolled down Birchwood Avenue, the newest addition to the suburban tapestry. Inside, the Daniels family, Mark, Lisa, and their daughter Sarah, were embarking on a fresh start in a quaint neighborhood nestled between towering oaks and neatly trimmed lawns. Excitement tinged with nervous anticipation bubbled within the family as they approached their new home, a charming two-story house with a welcoming porch and a neatly manicured garden. Yet, as their eyes wandered across the street, they couldn't help but notice the dark silhouette of the house next door, an imposing structure standing as a shadowy sentinel amidst the cheery homes. "Looks like we've got some interesting neighbors," Lisa remarked, her voice carrying a note of uncertainty. Mark nodded, a flicker of concern clouding his brow. "Hopefully they're friendly. It'll be good for Sarah to make some friends around here." Sarah, a shy 10-year-old with a penchant for adventure hidden behind her apprehensive smile, peered through the window at the foreboding house. It seemed to exude an air of mystery, its windows staring blankly back, and she couldn't shake the feeling that it held secrets waiting to be unraveled. The moving process was a symphony of activity. Boxes were heaved from the car, furniture shuffled into place, and the Daniels family began to make their new house a home. But no matter how they arranged the furniture or hung pictures on the walls, the ominous presence of the neighboring house loomed like a silent specter, casting a pall over their excitement. As twilight descended, Sarah's curiosity got the better of her. She slipped outside, the evening air cool against her skin, and hesitated at the edge of their yard, gazing across the street at the mysterious house. A figure stood on the porch of the neighboring house, barely visible in the fading light. Sarah squinted, her hazel eyes fixed on a boy about her age, his tousled hair casting shadows over piercing green eyes. He stood still, his gaze fixed on Sarah with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. "Hi!" Sarah called out tentatively. The boy remained motionless, an inscrutable expression on his face. A strange feeling of unease settled in Sarah's chest, but before she could retreat, the boy turned and vanished into the dimly lit interior of his house, leaving Sarah standing alone in the gathering darkness. Uneasy but intrigued, Sarah returned to her own house, her mind swirling with questions about the mysterious boy next door and the secrets that seemed to whisper from within the somber walls. Unbeknownst to her family, a spark of curiosity had been ignited within Sarah, a curiosity that would lead her down a path lined with enigmatic shadows and chilling revelations. The days in Birchwood Avenue passed in a whirlwind for the Daniels family, settling into their new routines, while the mystery of the neighboring house lingered like a haunting melody in the background. Despite her parents' warnings about the eerie house next door, Sarah found herself drawn to its enigmatic presence. One afternoon, as the autumn sun bathed the street in a golden glow, Sarah spotted movement in the yard of the neighboring house. Intrigued and somewhat nervous, she approached cautiously, her steps crunching on fallen leaves. There he was again, Owen, the boy next door, kneeling amidst a pile of scattered objects. Sarah couldn't help but notice the peculiar assortment: old books with faded spines, peculiar symbols scrawled on scraps of paper, and odd trinkets strewn around him. "Hey!" Sarah called out tentatively, taking a step closer. Owen glanced up, his gaze penetrating, yet strangely distant. He offered no response, merely observing Sarah with an intensity that made her uneasy. "I'm Sarah," she continued, trying to mask her unease. "We just moved in next door." Owen's lips parted slightly, but no words emerged. Instead, he turned his attention back to the scattered items, his fingers tracing the outlines of strange sigils etched onto an aged parchment. A chill danced down Sarah's spine. There was something unnervingly cryptic about Owen's demeanor, something that made her pulse quicken with an inexplicable mix of fear and fascination. Unwilling to linger in the uncomfortable silence, Sarah retreated to her own yard, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes following her every move. That evening, as Sarah recounted her encounter to her parents, a shadow of concern crossed their faces. "Sarah, I think it's best if you stay away from that boy," Mark cautioned, his voice laced with unease. Lisa nodded in agreement. "He seems different, sweetheart. It's important to listen to our instincts." But Sarah's curiosity had been piqued, and despite their warnings, she found herself stealing glances at the neighboring house, wondering about the mysteries that seemed to cling to Owen and the strange artifacts he surrounded himself with. As the night settled over Birchwood Avenue, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that her encounter with Owen was only the beginning, that there was more to the boy next door than met the eye, a feeling that both intrigued and unnerved her in equal measure. Sarah couldn't shake off the unnerving encounter with Owen. His mysterious aura lingered in her thoughts, a puzzle she couldn't resist trying to solve. Determined to uncover more, she decided to dig deeper into the enigmatic boy next door. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah's curiosity grew insatiable. She observed Owen from a distance, noticing his solitary nature and the peculiar objects he carried into the house: strange stones, weathered tomes, and an old ornate box that seemed to hold a secret of its own. One afternoon, driven by a mixture of trepidation and curiosity, Sarah mustered the courage to approach the neighboring house once more. She found Owen in the yard, engrossed in a peculiar ritual, a small flame flickering amidst a circle drawn in the dirt. "Owen?" she called tentatively, hoping for a response this time. Owen's head snapped up, his eyes locking onto Sarah's with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. "You shouldn't be here," he uttered, his voice a hushed warning. Sarah hesitated but pressed on, driven by an inexplicable need to unravel the mysteries that shrouded Owen. "I just want to know about you, about this place. There's something strange happening, and I want to understand." A shadow of conflict crossed Owen's face, his demeanor torn between caution and an underlying desire to share his burdensome secrets. "You wouldn't understand, it's dangerous." But Sarah's curiosity outweighed her fear. "Try me," she urged, stepping closer despite Owen's warning. Reluctantly, Owen relented, revealing fragments of a chilling tale, a legacy of a cursed family, ancient rituals, and a darkness lurking within the walls of his house. He spoke of strange occurrences, unexplained phenomena that plagued his family for generations, and the weight of an ominous force that seemed to cling to him. As Owen spoke, Sarah felt a chill in the air, a sense of foreboding that echoed the gravity of his words. She realized that the mysteries surrounding Owen were far more profound and sinister than she had ever imagined. Before Sarah could delve deeper, a sudden noise from within the house startled Owen, and he swiftly gathered his belongings, his eyes pleading with Sarah to leave. "You have to go now." With a heart pounding in her chest, Sarah retreated, her mind reeling with the revelations. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, but they formed a picture darker and more ominous than she could have ever fathomed. As Sarah returned home, a sense of unease settled within her, knowing that the secrets Owen had unveiled were just the tip of the iceberg, a glimpse into a world of shadows and malevolent forces that lurked frighteningly close to her own doorstep. Sarah's mind buzzed with the unsettling revelations from her encounter with Owen. Nightfall painted the neighborhood in a cloak of darkness, and Birchwood Avenue seemed to hold its breath as if waiting for the inevitable. A peculiar restlessness consumed Sarah, fueling a desire to untangle the enigmatic threads surrounding Owen and the eerie occurrences in the neighborhood. As the moon cast an eerie glow upon the streets, Sarah found herself drawn once more to the house next door. She approached cautiously, the air thick with an unsettling stillness. The lights in Owen's house flickered ominously, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. Hesitating at the threshold, Sarah's breath hitched as she noticed a faint glow emanating from within, accompanied by strange, guttural whispers that sent shivers down her spine. Determined to confront the mysteries head-on, Sarah stepped into the yard, her heart pounding in her chest. She found Owen in the dimly lit backyard, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and and resignation. "There's something here, isn't there?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible over the eerie whispers that seemed to echo from within the house. Owen nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's been growing. Stronger." As if on cue, a sudden gust of wind swept through the yard, the air thick with an otherworldly chill. Shadows coalesced, contorting into grotesque shapes that slithered across the ground. The very fabric of reality seemed to warp, as if giving way to an unseen malevolence. Sarah's heart raced with terror as she realized the gravity of the situation. Whatever darkness loomed within Owen's house was now unleashed, a force that defied comprehension and threatened to engulf them both. In a desperate bid to shield themselves, Owen and Sarah sought refuge behind a feeble barrier of flickering light. The whispers grew louder, their intensity a cacophony of ancient murmurs that seemed to tear at the fabric of their sanity. With every passing moment, the darkness encroached further, its malevolent tendrils reaching out hungrily. Owen's panicked gaze met Sarah's, both realizing they were in a battle against a force beyond their understanding. As Sarah fought to maintain her composure, a surge of determination washed over her. Clutching Owen's hand, she focused on a single thought: the need to protect, the need to survive. With a flicker of determination, Sarah called out into the abyss, her voice infused with a raw resolve. "You will not claim us!" In a burst of blinding light, a surge of energy emanated from Sarah, forcing back the encroaching darkness. The malevolent whispers faded, replaced by an eerie silence that settled like a blanket over the yard. Breathless and shaken, Sarah and Owen emerged from the harrowing encounter, their bond forged by the shared confrontation with the unfathomable. As dawn broke over Birchwood Avenue, Sarah realized that the mysteries were far from solved, but she had glimpsed a power within herself, a power that stood as a beacon against the encroaching darkness that lingered within the shadows of their quiet neighborhood. The morning sun peeked over the horizon, casting tentative rays of light across Birchwood Avenue, illuminating a neighborhood cloaked in an eerie calm. The events of the previous night lingered in Sarah's mind, the unsettling encounter with the malevolent forces lurking within Owen's house etched vividly in her memory. Determined to uncover the truth and put an end to the ominous presence looming over their neighborhood, Sarah sought answers. She embarked on a quest, consulting dusty tomes, scouring old archives, and seeking out whispers of ancient lore that might shed light on the dark forces that plagued them. Armed with newfound knowledge and an unyielding resolve, Sarah confronted Owen's family, their home once again a battleground between light and shadow. The air crackled with tension as Sarah stood before Owen's parents, her voice unwavering despite the gravity of the situation. "There's something in your house," Sarah began, her words carrying a weight of urgency and determination. "Something ancient, something malevolent. It's been lurking, feeding on darkness and growing stronger." Owen's parents exchanged uneasy glances, acknowledging the truth veiled behind Sarah's words. "We tried to contain it, to shield Owen from its grasp," Owen's mother admitted, her voice tinged with a mixture of remorse and fear. "But it's been growing restless," Owen's father added, his gaze haunted. "We fear we've lost control." A sense of impending doom loomed, the weight of the situation settling heavily upon them. The darkness within Owen's house, an ancient entity craving power and consuming all in its path, threatened to spill beyond the confines of their home. Sarah's determination burned brighter than ever. "We have to stop it," she declared, her voice a beacon of hope amidst the encroaching despair. United by a common cause, Sarah, Owen, and his parents forged a plan, a daring ritual to contain the malevolent force, to quell its insatiable hunger for darkness. As twilight descended upon Birchwood Avenue once more, the group gathered, each one channeling their strength and resolve. An array of protective symbols adorned the walls, and incantations whispered with solemn conviction filled the air. The house trembled, a primal howl echoing from within as the ancient entity fought against its bindings. Shadows writhed, a malevolent force clawing at the edges of reality, but the unity and determination of those standing against it stood firm. With a final surge of combined willpower, the ritual reached its climax. A burst of blinding light engulfed the house, piercing through the darkness and sealing the malevolent entity within its confines once more. Silence settled over Birchwood Avenue, broken only by the soft rustle of leaves in the night breeze. The danger had passed, the threat contained for now, and a fragile peace descended upon the neighborhood. As Sarah looked at Owen and his family, she knew that the shadows had been pushed back, that they had emerged victorious against the ancient darkness. Yet, she also understood that some secrets were best left buried, a testament to the fragile balance between light and darkness that lingered in their quiet suburban enclave. In the aftermath of the confrontation, Birchwood Avenue carried the weight of the recent events like a hushed secret. The air seemed lighter, yet an unspoken unease lingered, a silent acknowledgement of the fragile peace they now treaded upon. Sarah, now a sentinel of the unknown, found herself haunted by the echoes of their battle against the malevolent force. She wandered the neighborhood streets, her steps hesitant yet purposeful, searching for signs of any lingering darkness. The neighborhood gradually resumed its facade of normalcy, the faint echoes of their ordeal fading into whispers of memory. Owen and his family, bearing the weight of a burden lifted but not forgotten, sought solace in the quiet routines of everyday life. But for Sarah, the harrowing experience had left an indelible mark. In quiet moments, she found herself drawn to the house next door, gazing at the quiet facade that masked the haunting secrets within. The scars of the battle lingered, reminders of a confrontation that had unveiled a world beyond the veil of the ordinary. As weeks turned into months, life settled into a delicate balance. The neighborhood bloomed anew with the arrival of spring, yet a watchful vigilance lingered, a testament to the shadows that once lurked in their midst. Sarah's courage had awakened something within her, a curiosity tempered by caution, a resilience born of adversity. She had glimpsed a world teetering on the brink between light and darkness, and though the threat had been contained, she remained vigilant, knowing that the boundary between the ordinary and the extraordinary was often thinner than it seemed. Owen, too, bore the weight of the ordeal, his once haunted gaze now touched with a glimmer of hope. He and Sarah shared a quiet understanding, a connection forged by their shared experience, a silent acknowledgement of the secrets they safeguarded together. The neighborhood whispered tales of the inexplicable events that had transpired, stories that blurred the line between reality and myth. Yet, buried beneath those murmurs was a deeper truth, a tale of resilience, of courage in the face of the unknown, and of the bonds that forged in the crucible of adversity. As Sarah gazed at the sun setting over Birchwood Avenue, she knew that the darkness they had faced had not vanished entirely, but for now, it remained contained, a fragile peace guarded by the unspoken heroes who had confronted the shadows and emerged stronger, forever changed by the haunting secrets of their suburban haven. In the winter of 2017, Tom Kendrick, a mild-mannered accountant, embarked on a work trip that would turn into a nightmarish descent into the unknown. His destination was a remote town nestled in the shadow of ancient mountains, where the chill of the winter air seemed to penetrate the very soul. Little did Tom know that the quaint charm of the town masked a history steeped in the supernatural. As he checked into the solitary inn that would be his temporary residence, the locals regarded him with an unsettling mix of curiosity and foreboding. The inn, an ancient structure with creaking floorboards and dimly lit corridors, exuded an aura of quiet malevolence. Ignoring the ominous atmosphere, Tom set about his work, poring over financial documents late into the night. On the third night of his stay, the the town was blanketed in an otherworldly silence. Tom, feeling the weight of exhaustion, retired to his room. But as the clock struck midnight, the walls seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. Shadows danced on the periphery of his vision, taking on shapes that defied reason. The air turned icy, and Tom's breath hung in the stillness. The room became a canvas for unexplainable events. Objects levitated, and the temperature fluctuated between extremes. Unseen footsteps echoed in the hallway outside his door, each step resonating with a spectral eeriness. Disturbed but determined to rationalize the inexplicable, Tom delved into the history of the town. He discovered tales of a long-forgotten tragedy, an event so traumatic that the very fabric of the town seemed to bear its scars. Locals spoke in hushed whispers of apparitions seen wandering the streets at night, and of an ancient curse that befell those who dared to delve too deeply into the town's secrets. One evening, as Tom explored the town's archives, he stumbled upon an old journal. Its pages were filled with the desperate scribblings of a resident who had experienced similar paranormal phenomena. The entries grew increasingly frantic, detailing a malevolent force that consumed the town's inhabitants. Determined to unravel the mystery, Tom set out to find the source of the paranormal activity. His journey led him to an abandoned mansion at the town's edge, hidden among gnarled trees and overgrown vegetation. The mansion, a relic of a bygone era, seemed to resonate with an energy that sent shivers down Tom's spine. As he ventured deeper into the mansion, the air thickened with an oppressive presence. Tom felt an unseen gaze upon him, and the temperature dropped precipitously. Murmurs of forgotten voices echoed through the grand halls, recounting tales of despair and tragedy. In the mansion's dimly lit basement, Tom discovered a hidden chamber filled with ancient relics and symbols etched into the walls. The symbols seemed to come alive with an ethereal glow as he approached. Unbeknownst to Tom, he had stumbled upon the epicenter of the town's paranormal unrest, a place where the veil between the living and the supernatural had worn thin. As Tom attempted to decipher the symbols, a sudden gust of frigid wind extinguished his flashlight. In the suffocating darkness, a haunting voice whispered warnings that sent shivers down his spine. Panicking, Tom fumbled to find his way back, but the mansion seemed to shift and morph, confounding his sense of direction. Days turned into nights, and the town realized that Tom was missing. The innkeepers, with faces etched with worry, reported his disappearance to the authorities. The search for Tom Kendrick yielded no results. It was as if he had vanished into the very shadows that plagued the town. The mansion, now a looming specter against the winter sky, bore silent witness to Tom's inexplicable fate. Locals, haunted by the events that transpired, avoided the once charming town center. Whispers of Tom's disappearance lingered, whispered in hushed tones among the few brave souls who dared to tread the haunted streets. To this day, the mystery of Tom Kendrick remains unsolved, a chilling tale woven into the fabric of the town's history. The mansion, forever entwined with the supernatural, stands as a testament to the enigma that unfolded within its walls. As winter descends each year, the town, burdened by the weight of its haunted past, becomes a place where the living tread cautiously, wary of the unseen forces that linger in the shadows.
My 10-year high school reunion was coming up. I didn't originally plan on going, but my friends convinced me. The reunion was in August on a Saturday. It was organized by a group of people from our graduating class, and it was going to be held at some catering hall in a nice area of town. It had been a long time since I'd seen any of these people, minus my handful of friends from high school who I'd be going with. I really didn't want to go because I didn't like a lot of the people from my high school, and making small talk with 100 people I hadn't seen in 10 years sounded awful. But I also felt like if all my friends went and I didn't, I'd feel like I was missing out. When the night of the reunion finally came, I drove to my friend Kayla's house, and our two other friends Marissa and Sophia came as well. We were pre-gaming at her house, then we ended up calling an Uber from there. The reunion started around 8, so we got there fashionably late at 9. We stepped into the party hall, and right away familiar faces everywhere, only older looking versions of everyone. There had to be at least 80 to 100 people here, and it was more than I was expecting. Being with my friends made it easier to say hi to people I hadn't seen in forever. The vibe honestly was a bit different than I was expecting. There was a DJ, party lights, and a generally loud atmosphere, whereas what I was expecting was a quiet, intimate setting focused heavily on talking. People were getting really drunk at this, including my friends. We sat at a table with some other girls from high school. It was about 10 of us at the table. As the night progressed and everyone mingled and caught up with different people, I found myself feeling a bit awkward as my friends were doing their own things. I was alone at the table eating, and I noticed a guy who I didn't recognize at another table, looking in my direction. When we locked eyes, I looked away, but I wondered who he was. I glanced back for just a second and noticed he was still looking at me. Next thing I knew, he was coming over to sit next to me. He told me his name was Connor, and he started hitting on me immediately, saying he saw me across the room and couldn't help but come over and say hi. He was honestly decent looking, and I felt awkward sitting alone anyway, so I really didn't mind him sitting there. I said, "I don't recognize you. Did you go to our school?" He said, "Yeah, everyone's been saying that. I transferred to your guys' school our senior year. I didn't meet a lot of you." I basically said, "Oh, that's interesting. Who do you actually know here?" He replied that he's just friends with a couple guys who are also here. I asked their names, and he gave first names only. I guessed the last names, and he said yes to both as he laughed. We talked for a while until he asked for my number so that he could go back to his friends. I gave it to him and walked away. Overall impression was that he seemed normal and I enjoyed talking to him. Now I was left alone again, so after finishing my food and drink, I went to find my friends. They were all separated, talking with different people, some people who I wasn't the biggest fan of. I went over to Kayla, who was mid-conversation with a few people, and I joined the conversation. My friends were all wasted. I was definitely drunk, but not on their level. I kind of wanted to just go home. It almost felt like a saving grace when Connor texted me asking me if I needed a ride home since he's leaving. I texted him back, "Yes, please." He told me to meet him in the lobby of the building. So I looked around and then decided to just do an Irish exit. Too many people to say goodbye to. I saw Connor in the lobby by the front door. We walked to his car. It was a black two-door coupe. I honestly don't know what it was. I'm not a car person. He asked me to put my address into his phone. I thanked him for doing this as we started to drive. He pulled a couple water bottles from the back seat and handed me one, and he suggested I drink a lot of water to avoid a hangover tomorrow. So I started to sip some water. Suddenly my phone started blowing up. Kayla was calling me, and Marissa and Sophia were also texting me in our group chat. I didn't pick up the call, but I read their texts. They were asking where I went, and I told them I got a ride home. They kept pressing me, asking with who, and Kayla said check the Facebook group that organized the reunion. Then Marissa sent a screenshot of a post made by a girl in the Facebook group, warning everyone of a random guy who wasn't from our school going around talking to girls, introducing himself as a different name to everyone. Kayla tried calling me. I pressed decline and texted her I'm with this guy named Connor. She replied in all caps that someone said that she saw me leave with that guy. I wanted to actually vomit now. I looked at the guy, and then I evaluated the situation. I had to run when I had the chance. The next time we were stopped at a red light, I opened the door and said I gotta go and ran as fast as I could. I ran into this parking lot of a TGI Fridays. He didn't chase after me, he just kept driving. I called Kayla back right then and there, and she told me to wait here. They'd all Uber over here and pick me up. I waited in this parking lot for like 15 to 20 minutes until they arrived. By this point, I started feeling extremely drunk, lightheaded, and a foggy memory. I believe he had put something in that water bottle to try and sedate me. Thankfully, I didn't drink that much. The worst part about this was that the guy now had my apartment address. We all slept at Kayla's house that night. The next morning, I drove home, but shortly after entering my apartment, there was a knock at my door. I freaked out thinking it was that guy, but I saw it was my neighbor through the window. I opened the door, and my neighbor asked me if I knew the guy who came to my apartment last night and was looking through the windows. I told him all about last night. He was appalled too. He said when he confronted the guy asked him if this was where Miranda lives. My neighbor was wise enough to say, no, you have the wrong apartment. My neighbor doing this just may have saved me from that guy ever coming back. When my lease was up, I moved to a different apartment in the same community, just to be safe. I'm super grateful my friends all tried to warn me in time before it was too late. My high school does 5 and 10-year reunions. My 5-year reunion was a few years ago. My high school was on the smaller side with around 200 kids per grade, so just about everyone knew everyone, even if just partially. For the 5-year reunion, it was being held in a small banquet hall in town. I was excited to go see all my old friends who I hadn't seen in forever. Of course, arriving to these things alone can be a bit scary, so my friend Julia and I were going to go together. Julia has been my best friend ever since middle school. She knows about everything that I've been through, and I know about everything that she's been through. That includes the situation I had with a boy named Tyler. Tyler was a boy who I had a little bit of history with, meaning we hooked up a few times senior year. But he quickly started giving me crazy and obsessive vibes, and when I cut him off, he threatened me and got aggressive. He sent me threatening texts, like he knows where I live and he knows when my parents aren't home and more. One night he came to my parents' house and threw rocks at my window, and my dad had to go outside and chase him away. As time passed, I guess he lost interest in harassing me. Tyler was friends with some of the, I guess you'd say, weirder kids in high school. Not the athletes, not the cool kids, not the gothy kids, just the slightly weird group. When word got out that he'd been harassing me, a lot of people grew to hate him. I just hoped he wasn't going to be at the reunion. Julia and I got to the venue it was being hosted at and did our rounds, saying hi to a bunch of people. There was a solid 50 people there at the peak of the night, which was a solid turnout considering the small size of our grade to begin with. At some point in the night, though, I got a tap on the shoulder from none other than Tyler. When I turned to see him, I felt my heart sink. He said, "Hey, can we talk?" It had been years since I'd spoken to him, and that was the first thing he said to me. I said something along the lines of, "Hey, I hope you're good, but there's nothing to talk about," and I tried to walk away. He grabbed my shoulder and spun me around and said, "You're already going to be like that?" I pushed his hand off of me and said, "Let go of me." He looked around nervously and said, all right, and walked away. I could tell he didn't want the negative attention. This now ruined the mood of the night for me, as I had to try my hardest to avoid looking at or going anywhere near Tyler. I noticed he was with one of the kids I remember him hanging around in high school. I got into a conversation with Julia and a few other girls about the situation with Tyler, and how he just grabbed me moments ago. Everyone was on my side and agreed he'd always been a weirdo creep and was known for being aggressive with girls. Oddly enough, I didn't really see him again after I saw him with his friend. I assumed he left early, which was a major relief for me. Julia and I stayed for a few more hours. Then we left with a few other girls to go to a dive bar nearby. And then, after another hour or so, Julia dropped me off at home. As I walked up to my front door, I noticed another car pass by Julia's car and continue driving down the street. Considering the hour and how quiet the street is, that was concerning. It was a Jeep Cherokee. Maybe it was paranoia, or maybe I was rightfully curious, but the next day I looked up Tyler's Instagram. He was private. I requested to follow him with my fake account, which, yes, I have for situations like this. He accepted my follow request, but I couldn't see any pictures of a Jeep, or any car for that matter. This made me feel slightly more at ease. I live alone, so my worst fear was Tyler finding my new address and coming to my house at night. The next day, Tyler DM'd me on Instagram a long message, trying to manipulate me into seeing him. All these years later, he was still giving me obsessive, creepy vibes. I blocked his Instagram, but I never could have imagined what that would have led to next. The same night I blocked him, I woke up to my doorbell ringing at 1 a.m., repeatedly. I was so scared. It had to be Tyler, I just knew it. I didn't know what to do. I didn't exactly have my dad here to chase him away like all those years ago. My parents live in Florida now. The doorbell ringing turned to angry-sounding pounds on the door, booming through the apartment. This pounding went on for some time, then the doorbell again, over and over and over. I finally went to the door and it stopped. I peeked out the window at the top of the door, and nobody was outside. I slept with one eye open that night, and then the next day, my friend's dad helped me out and contacted his detective friend in our hometown. He came by the house and took pictures of the texts, from years ago and the long DM from just a few nights before. He then contacted Tyler and gave him a verbal warning to cease all contact, or this would be considered stalking and harassment. So far it's worked. It makes me wish we went to the police all those years ago. Some people are dangerous and simply don't change. I hope he's not at the 10-year reunion. I was seeing this girl for a few weeks. We'd been on 2 dates. Her name was Phoebe. We matched on a dating app and eventually met a few days later. She was 4 years older than me. Our first date was drinks, and our second date we went out with my friends on a weekend. My friends had neutral opinions about her. They thought she was, quote, nice and kinda quiet. They'd later reveal their actual thoughts on her, but I'll get to that later. Phoebe invited me to an upcoming high school reunion party. She told me she didn't want to go alone, and honestly, after she came to hang out with my friends and I felt like I owed her. This reunion party was falling on a random Saturday in the fall. It wasn't organized by her school, though. She told me that it was organized by this rich guy from her class, and it was being hosted at his house. I haven't had my high school reunion yet, but as far as I know, these things are usually held at bars or catering halls. We got to this guy's house, and it was admittedly a fancy-looking house. It had a gated driveway, but no fancy cars parked anywhere in sight. My thought was maybe the owner parked his car in the garage during the party. The second we stepped into the house, I felt like everyone was staring at us. More specifically, me. A few people came up to Phoebe and hugged her hello, then shifted their attention to me. I felt almost like I was being interrogated with some of the questions these people were asking me. Like my whole life story, what I do for a living, who I live with. Finally, Phoebe pulled us away, only to go talk to more people who I also felt like were asking really personal and weird questions. There was also something about all the people in here. They seemed to be older looking than 28, which was the age Phoebe told me she was. Some of these people looked well into their 30s. I made a comment on that to Phoebe, and she said, yeah, some of these people aren't aging too well. I asked if she remembers all these people, and she said yes. I then asked who the party host was. I was curious to meet the owner of this big house. She said she hadn't seen him yet. Throughout the entirety of me being there, I felt like everybody was shooting me daggers. They wouldn't look away either. I whispered that to Phoebe, and she said back it's probably because they're wondering who I am. At the time, that was the only logical explanation I could think of too. It's hard to explain the growing awkwardness at this party, but I can assure you, this was not what a normal high school reunion would be like. There was no music, and everyone was dressed weirdly, not like normal 28-year-olds. But that's the other thing. None of these people looked like they were in their 20s. I was getting uncomfortable with some of the stares I was getting in the room we were in, so I told Phoebe I'm going to run to the bathroom. Realistically, I just wanted to get out of that room and explore the house a little bit. I didn't have a drink in my hand or anything to make me feel at ease. I was just walking around this giant house empty-handed, and anyone I passed stared at me. To say I felt out of place would be the understatement of the century. I found the bathroom. I stepped inside even though I didn't have to go. I locked myself inside just to sit and regather myself, take a break from the awkwardness outside. I texted all my friends about how weird this reunion was, and wondering how I could convince Phoebe to leave early. We'd already been there about 30 to 45 minutes, and this unnamed mystery party host was nowhere to be seen. Phoebe texted me, "Where are you?" I replied, "In the bathroom, give me a minute." Then I followed that up with, "This party's really weird, I'm down to leave soon." She said, "Why?" I said, "Everyone's being weird." Then someone knocked on the bathroom door, so I couldn't sit in there anymore. I washed my hands quick and left the bathroom, and the guy waiting outside, who looked like one of the younger ones here, said in a very low voice to me, "You should leave. That girl isn't who she says she is." I froze for a second, then said, "Phoebe?" He said, "Whatever she told you her name is." He then asked what she told me this party was, and I said that she told me it was a high school reunion. The guy then smirked and said, "Do these people look like they're going to a high school reunion?" He left it off with, and I quote, "Trust me, leave sooner than later." And then he walked into the bathroom and shut the door. I almost knocked on the door to get him to come out and further explain, but I thought for a second. I was already suspicious and uncomfortable in this house. That guy just confirmed something weird is going on here. I walked straight to the front door without drawing attention to myself. I still felt people staring at me as I walked to the door. I walked straight from my car in the street and drove home. Phoebe texted me asking where I went. I didn't answer. When I got home, I looked up her number on White Pages. That number was not associated with the name Phoebe. The name that came up was Claire Foster. The address that I picked her up at both times is also different than the address that came up on White Pages, which made me realize I never saw her leave the house. She was already waiting on the sidewalk both times. I replied to her text, "I had to leave, I'm sorry," and blocked her number. My friends all made jokes, and they told me she thought she was weird and off from the start, but they didn't want to tell me that and make me feel bad. My one friend joked that it sounded like I was in the movie Get Out. My friends and family all have had little theories as to what was going on. Some people would even think I exaggerated the whole thing until I told them about the fake name the girl gave me, and the guy telling me to leave sooner than later.
It was a chilly Friday night when I found myself making an unexpected trip to Walmart. I needed to grab some last-minute groceries for the weekend, and the store was my go-to option for late-night shopping. As I entered, the bright fluorescent lights illuminated the empty aisles, and a sense of solitude hung in the air. I quickly grabbed a shopping cart and started making my way through the store. Since it was late, there were only a few other shoppers scattered around, and it felt eerily quiet. As I navigated through the aisles, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Every so often, I caught glimpses of a man out of the corner of my eye, seemingly following me. I dismissed it initially, thinking it might be a coincidence. However, as I continued my shopping, I noticed that no matter how many times I turned corners or changed aisles, he was always there, lurking in the shadows. Panic started to set in as I realized that this was no coincidence. This man was definitely following me. I decided to approach a store employee, my heart pounding with anxiety. I explained the situation to them, and they agreed to help. Together, we walked through the store while the employee kept an eye on the man. The stalker eventually realized he was being watched and disappeared into the depths of the store. With the employee's assistance, I managed to finish my shopping and make it to the checkout counter safely. I couldn't help but wonder what that man's intentions were. To this day, the memory of that eerie Walmart encounter still sends shivers down my spine, and I'm grateful for the vigilant employee who helped me escape a potentially dangerous situation. It was a regular evening when I decided to stop by Walmart to pick up some household essentials. I made my way through the store, grabbing items from my shopping list, and everything seemed perfectly ordinary until I found myself in the electronics section. As I browsed the shelves, contemplating whether to buy a new gadget, a sudden, distorted announcement blared over the store's intercom. It was unlike any announcement I'd ever heard, completely unintelligible and eerie. The voice seemed garbled and distorted, and the words were impossible to decipher. I wasn't the only one taken aback. Shoppers around me exchanged puzzled and alarmed glances. The announcement continued, with the voice growing increasingly unsettling. It felt like something out of a horror movie, and I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. The announcement persisted for what felt like an eternity, though in reality, it was only a few minutes. Abruptly, it stopped, and the store returned to its usual bustle. I approached a store employee to inquire about the bizarre announcement, but they seemed genuinely confused and claimed not to have heard anything out of the ordinary. To this day, I can't explain what I heard that evening, and the memory of that strange intercom announcement still sends chills down my spine whenever I think about it. It was a chilling experience that left me with an eerie sense of the unknown lurking in the aisles of Walmart. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, and I decided to take my 2 young children to Walmart for some shopping. As we strolled through the store, my kids, aged 4 and 6, were naturally drawn to the toy aisle. The colorful displays and endless options made it a favorite spot for them. As we browsed the toys, something peculiar happened. My youngest child, the 4-year-old, pointed at an empty shelf and said, "Look, Mommy." The little girl wants to play. I was taken aback because there was no one else in the aisle, at least not that I could see. My child continued to have a full-blown conversation with an invisible friend, giggling and chatting as if they were playing with another child. I tried to rationalize it, thinking it was just an overactive imagination, but it was uncanny how detailed and vivid my child's description of the little girl was. My older child even joined in, talking to their unseen sibling. The entire experience was a mix of adorable and eerie. Reluctantly, I ushered my kids out of the toy aisle and continued our shopping. But the memory of that strange encounter has stayed with me. I can't help but wonder if there was something supernatural happening in that Walmart that day, and I still can't explain the inexplicable presence my children seemed to interact with. One evening, I found myself at Walmart, engrossed in my shopping list, and unaware of the peculiar incident that was about to unfold. I had my phone resting in the cart as I perused the aisles, checking off items one by one. Suddenly, amidst the hum of shoppers and the ambient store noise, I heard my phone ring. It was an unusual ringtone, different from the standard one I had set. Surprised, I picked up my phone and answered the call, expecting to hear a familiar voice on the other end. However, all I heard was static, strange distorted noises, and an eerie echo. Confused and a little unnerved, I said, "Hello?" A few times, but there was no response. The unsettling sounds continued, and it felt like I had stumbled into a Twilight Zone episode. I hung up and checked my call history, but there was no record of an incoming call or any indication that I had received a call at all. It was as if the call had never happened. Shaken by the bizarre experience, I quickly finished my shopping and left the store. To this day, I can't explain what occurred that evening in Walmart. The phantom phone call remains a haunting mystery, and the feeling of eerie unease lingers whenever I recount the story. It was a chilly winter evening, and I needed to make a late-night trip to Walmart for some essentials. The store was relatively empty, which was unsurprising given the time of day. As I finished my shopping, I made my way towards the exit, pushing my cart loaded with groceries. As I stepped out into the dimly lit parking lot, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. There, beneath a flickering streetlight, I saw a shadowy figure. It was a tall, lanky person, dressed in dark clothing, and their face obscured by a hood. This figure appeared to be watching me. At first, I tried to dismiss it as a fellow shopper leaving the store, but as I continued walking towards my car, I couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. The figure stayed at a distance, always maintaining a careful distance from me. Fear began to creep in, and I fumbled for my keys, glancing back to see if the shadowy person was still there. They were, and it seemed as though they were deliberately mimicking my movements. Panic surged through me, and I knew I had to act fast. I made a sudden turn, abandoning my cart, and dashed back into the store. I approached a store employee and explained the situation, my heart pounding. They immediately called security and offered to escort me to my car. As we returned to the parking lot with security in tow, the shadowy figure was nowhere to be seen. The security personnel assured me that they would monitor the area and suggested I file a report with the local authorities. I hurriedly loaded my groceries into my car and left Walmart, feeling a profound sense of relief, but also lingering unease. To this day, I can't explain who that shadowy figure was or what their intentions were. The experience served as a chilling reminder that even the most mundane errands can take a terrifying turn, leaving a lasting impression on my sense of safety and security. It was a warm summer afternoon, and I decided to stop by Walmart to pick up a few items I needed for a weekend getaway. The store was bustling with shoppers, and I maneuvered my cart through the crowded aisles, grabbing what I needed as I went along. As I reached the checkout lanes, I noticed an abandoned shopping cart nearby. It was piled high with various items, seemingly forgotten by its owner. I thought it was strange, but people occasionally changed their minds and left items behind, so I didn't pay it much attention. I completed my purchase and headed towards the exit, pushing my cart full of bags. As I made my way past the cart that had caught my eye earlier, something about it struck me as odd. Upon closer inspection, I realized that the items in the cart were a peculiar mix of products: a child's bicycle helmet, a box of diapers, a bouquet of flowers, and a few cans of dog food. My curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to ask a store employee if they knew anything about the abandoned cart. The employee seemed puzzled and explained that they hadn't seen anyone leave the cart behind and that it had been there for quite some time. Feeling uneasy, I glanced around the store, wondering if the owner of the cart had become separated from it or had encountered an emergency. I decided to alert store security, fearing that something might be wrong. Security personnel arrived and reviewed the store's surveillance footage. To our surprise, the footage revealed that the cart had been left there by a person who had appeared disoriented, moving erratically through the store, and seemingly talking to themselves. They eventually abandoned the cart and exited the store. The store's management decided to contact the local authorities to check on the situation further. As I left Walmart, I couldn't help but wonder about the mysterious person who had left behind the cart full of such disparate items. It was a perplexing and unsettling encounter that left me with more questions than answers, serving as a reminder that even routine trips to the store can sometimes lead to eerie and inexplicable mysteries. As a freshman in college, I decided to save money by living with my parents, who resided in the same town as my university. It was a practical choice, and everything seemed to be going smoothly in this arrangement. I attended my classes, made new friends, and was generally excited about this new phase of life. However, little did I know that my college experience was about to take a terrifying turn. It all began in my calculus class, a challenging course that many students found daunting. The class was held in a large lecture hall, and like any other class, students would gradually form their own routines and seating arrangements. I usually sat in the same spot, near the middle of the hall, among a group of friends. One day, I noticed a student who stood out from the rest. He seemed significantly older than the typical college freshman, and his appearance was rather disheveled. What was even more disconcerting was his behavior. Unlike most students who arrived on time and settled into their seats, this guy consistently arrived late. It was as if he deliberately chose to slip into the lecture hall just moments before it began. What was even more unsettling was that he would choose an empty seat uncomfortably close to me. At first, I tried to rationalize his behavior, thinking that perhaps he had a unique schedule or other commitments that caused him to be late. I didn't want to make any assumptions or judgments about my fellow students. In fact, I've always been someone who is willing to help others. So when he started asking questions about the class material, I didn't think twice about offering assistance. Our interactions started innocently enough. He seemed genuinely interested in catching up with the coursework and often requested my help to clarify concepts or review lecture notes. Being academically inclined and eager to lend a hand, I willingly shared my knowledge with him, thinking that it was a way to assist a fellow student in need. However, as the days went by, his behavior began to take a disturbing turn. One evening, after a particularly challenging calculus lecture, he approached me with an unsettling request. He asked if we could exchange Snapchat usernames so that we could continue discussing class-related topics outside of class. Although I felt a twinge of hesitation, I didn't want to come across as unfriendly or uncooperative, so I reluctantly shared my username. It was a decision I would come to deeply regret. Later that evening, as I checked my Snapchat messages, I was met with a barrage of disturbing and aggressive messages from this classmate. The messages were laced with threats, taunts, and unsettling remarks that sent a shiver down my spine. It was as if he had undergone a drastic transformation from the mildly eccentric classmate I had encountered in the lecture hall to a menacing and unhinged figure lurking in the shadows of my digital world. However, the nightmare had only just begun. I discovered that he had used Snap Maps, a feature on Snapchat that allows users to see the real-time location of their friends to pinpoint my exact address. Terrifyingly, he began sending messages that demanded I come outside. The chilling realization that this person knew where I lived left me paralyzed with fear. In that moment, I faced a difficult decision. I was genuinely frightened by the messages and the fact that he had tracked down my home address. But I also grappled with uncertainty about whether involving the police was warranted. Nevertheless, I knew I had to take immediate action to protect myself. With trembling hands, I blocked him on Snapchat and disabled my location settings, hoping to sever the digital connection that had become a conduit for this nightmare. This unsettling encounter left me profoundly shaken, and it served as a stark reminder of the potential dangers that could lurk behind seemingly innocent interactions, even with fellow students. It was a turning point that made me acutely aware of the importance of setting strong boundaries in the digital age and being cautious about sharing personal information online. I was a freshman in high school, and the days leading up to my crazy Snapchat horror story had been relatively calm. I began to believe that this one creepy classmate who had been acting very strange towards me had finally given up his disturbing obsession with me. The initial relief I felt was like a soothing balm for my frayed nerves, and I started to regain a semblance of normalcy in my life. Little did I know that this deceptive calm would soon be shattered by a horrifying revelation. On the day of the incident, the weather was pleasant, and I had decided to spend time with my friends in a shopping center parking lot. We gathered there, chatting and laughing as we often did, completely unaware that someone was lurking in the shadows of the virtual world, waiting for the right moment to strike. It was during this seemingly carefree gathering that my phone buzzed with a notification from Snapchat. I absent-mindedly tapped the icon, curious about the message that awaited me. What I saw when the app opened sent shivers down my spine. The image displayed was a photograph taken earlier that day, in the same parking lot where I was currently with my friends. It was an eerie and unsettling photograph of me walking with my friends, captured without our knowledge. The sight of this image was horrifying for several reasons. First, because it was a clear invasion of my privacy, as I had already blocked the creepy classmate on Snapchat. Second, because it meant that he had created an entirely fake account, disguising himself as a girl to deceive me. As I swiped through the story, my heart sank further. The Snapchat story featured a chilling collage of pictures, all of me, taken surreptitiously over the past couple of weeks. There were images of me driving, unaware that I was being watched. Candid shots from my outings with friends, like going to the movies, had been included, and my heart stopped when I saw intimate pictures of me dining at a restaurant with a girl I had feelings for. These moments were meant to be personal, cherished memories, but they had been perverted into something sinister. The feeling of being constantly surveilled, of having every moment of my life scrutinized and exposed, was paralyzing. It wasn't just about the pictures, it was the psychological torment of knowing that someone was lurking in the shadows, invading my world without my consent. Overwhelmed by fear, anger, and a sense of violation, I knew I couldn't let this continue. With trembling hands, I blocked the fake Snapchat account once again, but this time I was determined to put an end to this torment. I contacted the authorities, reported the stalking, and decided to press charges. The legal process was complex and time-consuming, but I was unwavering in my pursuit of justice. Law enforcement launched a thorough investigation to unmask the identity of the relentless cyberstalker. It was a grueling and emotionally draining process, but it was the only way to ensure that this person would face the consequences of their actions. In the wake of this harrowing experience, I became hyper-vigilant about my online presence. I revamped my security settings on all social media platforms, making them as airtight as possible. I also became acutely aware of who I connected with online, emphasizing quality over quantity in my digital relationships. It was my first semester at Montana State University in Billings, and like any college freshman, I was eager to embrace the new experiences and challenges that awaited me. While my high school friends had mostly scattered to different colleges, I was determined to make new friends and thrive academically in my hometown. One of the courses I had registered for was Calculus 101, a subject I knew could be demanding. I had heard mixed reviews about the professor and the course itself, but I was determined to excel. Little did I know that my biggest challenge that semester would come from a source I never anticipated, a fellow classmate. From the first day of classes, there was something off about a guy who sat in the back row of the lecture hall. His name was Ethan, and he immediately caught my attention for all the wrong reasons. His appearance was unsettling, to say the least. His hair was greasy and disheveled, hanging in front of his face like a curtain. He wore clothes that looked like they hadn't seen a washing machine in weeks, and his shoes were scuffed and falling apart. The most unsettling aspect, however, was the dirt that seemed permanently ingrained into his skin, giving him an eerie, grimy appearance. Despite his unusual demeanor and appearance, he appeared polite, albeit incredibly shy. He hardly ever spoke in class and kept to himself, which only added to the mystique surrounding him. As the weeks went by, I couldn't help but notice that he always chose a seat close to mine, even though the lecture hall had plenty of empty seats. It was as if he was deliberately trying to be near me, and this realization sent shivers down my spine. One fateful day, our calculus professor assigned a particularly challenging set of homework problems. I was immersed in my work when I felt a tap on my shoulder. Startled, I turned around to see Ethan, standing there with an uncertain look on his face. He asked me if I could help him understand some of the material better. Hesitant, but wanting to be helpful, I agreed to help him with the homework after class. After class, I gave him my Snapchat username, thinking it would be an easy way to share study materials and solutions to the homework. Little did I know that this seemingly innocent act would open the door to a deeply unsettling and disturbing encounter. That evening, as I was settling down to review my notes, I noticed several Snapchat messages from Ethan. Expecting questions about calculus, I opened them with a sense of duty. However, what I saw on my screen left me utterly unnerved. The messages were accompanied by photos. One of them was a shirtless photo of Ethan, taken in what appeared to be a grimy bathroom, and the caption read, "Nice jeans, by the way." I felt my heart race as I read his messages, which became increasingly inappropriate and harassing. He made derogatory remarks about my appearance, invaded my personal space online, and sent messages that hinted at a disturbing physical confrontation. I couldn't believe what I was experiencing. Despite the growing fear and discomfort, I initially hesitated to block him on Snapchat, fearing it might create an even more awkward situation in class. Instead, I sent a stern reply, asking him to keep our conversations strictly focused on class-related topics. But Ethan's behavior only grew more aggressive and threatening with time. He started sending me explicit and menacing messages, both in text and images. He seemed to know personal details about me that I had never shared with him, which heightened my anxiety. One evening, he used Snapchat's Snap Maps to track my location and sent a message that chilled me to the bone. "I know where you are. Don't think you can hide." At that moment, I realized I could no longer dismiss his actions as mere online harassment. I felt genuinely threatened and knew that I had to take immediate action to protect myself. Reporting the situation to the police was a difficult decision, but I knew it was the only way to put an end to this distressing and frightening encounter that had invaded my life. Hey guys, Dark Tales Library here. I just wanted to say a big thank you for making it to the end of the video. It means a lot. And if you liked it, please consider subscribing. It helps out more than you know and also tells me what you guys like and want to see more of. Thanks again.
The day had started like any other for Adam, a 16-year-old student at St. Agnes High School. The sun's feeble light began to break through his bedroom window as he prepared for the day ahead. The usual routine unfolded, a quick breakfast, tying shoelaces and exchanging casual morning pleasantries with his family. Little did he know that this seemingly ordinary day would descend into a nightmare. As the school day progressed, Adam found himself caught up in the hustle and bustle of classes and extracurricular activities. When the final bell rang, signaling the end of the day, he met up with his friend Jake outside the main entrance. Their laughter echoed through the emptying halls, oblivious to the darkening shadows that lurked in the corners. As the duo made their way to the last class of the day, a feeling of unease settled in the air. The ominous wind outside seemed to whisper warnings that went unnoticed. Unbeknownst to Adam and Jake, a gang, infamous for their brutality, had infiltrated the school grounds. Inside the classroom, the day's lessons unfolded, oblivious to the impending tragedy. The students' laughter and chatter filled the room, a stark contrast to the looming danger. Suddenly, the intercom crackled to life, and Principal Anderson's voice echoed through the speakers, distorting into a nightmarish cadence. "Attention, students. This is Principal Anderson. We are currently under a Code Red lockdown. I repeat, Code Red. Stay in your classrooms, lock the doors, and remain silent. This is not a drill." The chilling message hung in the air, and panic spread through the room like wildfire. Adam's hands trembled as he fumbled to lock the classroom door, the metallic click resonating like a harbinger of doom. The gang had already infiltrated the school, and the once familiar walls had transformed into a labyrinth of terror. The principal's voice returned, this time more haunting than before. "Do not attempt to leave your classrooms. The police are on their way. Stay hidden. Stay silent." As the distant sirens grew louder, hope flickered in the hearts of the students. Little did they know that salvation was still a distant promise, and the nightmare was about to unfold in ways that would scar them forever. The muffled scream from the hallway shattered the fragile illusion of safety. Panic surged as the gang's presence became undeniable. Adam clutched his phone, seeking a lifeline to the outside world, but the screen remained blank, a cruel reminder of their isolation. The door shuddered under a sudden impact, and the room plunged into chaos. With a deafening crash, the gang burst in, masked figures wielding weapons, their eyes void of mercy. The once secure classroom became a battleground, and Adam watched in horror as his friends fell victim to the merciless onslaught. Cowering in a corner, Adam witnessed the brutality, the room tainted by the metallic scent of blood. The gang retreated into the shadows, leaving behind a scene of unimaginable horror. The once vibrant school had become a graveyard, echoing with the sobs and whispers of despair. As the police finally breached the school's defenses, Adam was left to grapple with the trauma of that night. The survivors emerged from hiding places, their eyes haunted by the atrocities they had witnessed. St. Agnes High School, once a symbol of learning and camaraderie, now stood as a chilling testament to the fragility of innocence. In the aftermath, the community grappled with the aftermath of the tragedy. Adam, forever changed by the night's events, carried the weight of survivors' guilt and haunted memories. The whispers of despair lingered in the shadows, a chilling reminder that even in the sanctuaries of education, darkness could descend, leaving scars that time may never fully heal. Mark, weary from months of relentless work, decided to take a much-needed vacation to visit his family's remote cabin. The drive was long, winding through dense woods that seemed to stretch on forever. By the time night fell, his exhaustion reached a breaking point. The tires hummed a hypnotic rhythm as he navigated the forested labyrinth. The desolate rest area he stumbled upon seemed like a haven for a restless traveler. The air, however, was thick with an unsettling stillness. Desperate for some reprieve, Mark reclined his seat, hoping to find solace in a few hours of sleep. The inky blackness of the night surrounded him as he descended into the clutches of a restless slumber. A subtle creak startled Mark awake, his senses on high alert. The rest area, once abandoned, now pulsated with an otherworldly energy. Whispers like malevolent spirits seemed to permeate the air, conversing in an unknown language. Mark strained his ears, and that's when he saw them. Shadowy figures emerging from the darkness, each adorned with grotesque masks that twisted their features into nightmarish expressions. Fear gripped Mark as he observed the intruders, armed with an eerie assortment of weapons that gleamed ominously in the scant moonlight. Knives, chains, and tools hinted at a malevolent purpose beyond mere theft. The whispers grew louder, revealing sinister plans that sent shivers down Mark's spine. Panic surged as he realized the gravity of the situation. These weren't ordinary thieves. They were orchestrating something far more sinister. In the oppressive darkness, Mark moved cautiously, finding refuge in the shadows. The whispers intensified, creating an unholy symphony that echoed through the rest area. It was a surreal nightmare, the air thick with palpable malevolence. As the masked figures closed in, Mark's senses heightened, every nerve on edge. The night seemed to stretch endlessly as he contemplated his options. Just when the darkness threatened to consume him, the distant wail of an approaching ambulance shattered the silence. The masked intruders recoiled, their predatory stance giving way to frantic panic. They melted into the shadows, disappearing into the night as if they were never there. The ambulance's flashing lights cast an ethereal glow over the scene, inadvertently rescuing Mark from the brink of an unimaginable fate. Mark waited in the darkness until the echoes of the fleeing intruders faded away. Trembling, he unlocked his car and sped away from the rest area, haunted by the memory of the chilling whispers in the woods. The road to his family's cabin, once familiar, now felt like a journey through a surreal dreamscape. The lingering whispers echoed in his mind, a haunting reminder that sometimes salvation emerges from the most unexpected places, and the line between reality and nightmare is thinner than the shadows that lurk in the heart of the woods. Arriving at the cabin, Mark found solace in the embrace of his family. Yet, the whispers lingered in the recesses of his mind, a ghostly reminder of that eerie night. The woods, once a sanctuary, now held secrets that danced in the shadows, a chilling tale that Mark would carry with him, forever altering the way he perceived the thin veil between safety and the unknown. In the heart of an ancient forest, where the gnarled branches of twisted trees reached out like skeletal fingers, stood Blackwood Manor, a looming testament to the unspeakable horrors that lurked within. The air was thick with an otherworldly stillness, as if the very atmosphere clung to the darkness that pervaded the abandoned mansion. Rumors of its sinister past echoed through the nearby village, where even the bravest villagers dared not utter its name after nightfall. A group of friends, their youthful curiosity piqued by the macabre tales surrounding Blackwood Manor, embarked on a chilling adventure. As they approached the rusted gates, a spectral mist seemed to crawl up from the ground, tendrils of ethereal fog reaching for them with icy fingers. Unfazed, the group pressed on, the crunching of leaves beneath their feet the only sound to pierce the eerie silence. Once inside, the mansion greeted them with a symphony of creaking floorboards and the distant moans of unseen specters. The walls bore witness to faded portraits of a forgotten lineage, their eyes following the intruders with an unsettling intensity. The air hung heavy with the scent of decay, the mansion seemingly exhaling the sins of its past into the lungs of the living. As the clock struck midnight, the grand hall came alive with shadows that danced grotesquely on the walls. A distant wail, echoing through unseen corridors, sent shivers down the spines of the friends. The temperature plummeted, and the ornate chandeliers above swayed with a ghostly momentum, as if the very essence of the mansion recoiled at the intrusion. Seeking refuge, the group gathered in the grand hall, surrounded by towering marble statues that exuded an otherworldly malevolence. The portraits lining the walls seemed to contort into sinister grins, their eyes now void of any semblance of humanity. An oppressive whisper filled the room, recounting a tragic tale of betrayal and doom that had befallen the family that once called Blackwood Manor home. Undeterred by the escalating sense of dread, the group ventured into the mansion's forbidden depths, a hidden chamber concealed behind a time-worn tapestry. Unbeknownst to them, this chamber served as a mausoleum for the malevolent spirit that dwelled within. The temperature dropped to bone-chilling levels, and the walls seemed to ooze with a thick, viscous substance that clung to the living like a sinister embrace. In the heart of the chamber, the friends unwittingly unleashed a ghostly figure, a tortured specter that materialized before them with a ghastly glow. The walls pulsated with memories of long-forgotten torment, and the air crackled with an otherworldly energy as the figure exacted its vengeance. The temperature dropped further, and the friends' breath hung in the air like spectral mist. One by one, the friends succumbed to the relentless assault of the malevolent spirit. Their anguished screams, interwoven with the spectral wails of the mansion, created a dissonant symphony of suffering. Blood materialized on the walls, oozing like liquid shadows as the very essence of the mansion seemed to consume the life force of the intruders. As the night wore on, the lone survivor, haunted by the gruesome scenes of their friend's demise, sought refuge in the mansion's forgotten corners. The walls seemed to pulsate with an otherworldly heartbeat, and shadows congealed into grotesque shapes that seemed to writhe with malevolent intent. In a final confrontation, the survivor faced the vengeful spirit, a manifestation of anguish and betrayal that sought to drag the intruders into the abyss of its own despair. The room quivered with unseen forces as the survivor pleaded for mercy, their breath forming spectral clouds in the frigid air. Amid the pulsating shadows, the survivor uncovered a long-forgotten relic, an amulet adorned with ancient symbols that seemed to resonate with the tortured spirit. As the amulet touched the ghostly figure, the mansion convulsed with unseen energies. The air filled with a blinding light, casting elongated shadows that seemed to claw at the walls. When the light subsided, the mansion stood silent, devoid of the spectral presence that had bound it for centuries. The lone survivor, marked by the harrowing ordeal, emerged into the dawning light, carrying the weight of the mansion's dark history. News of the group's disappearance spread through the village, and Blackwood Manor, now stripped of its spectral inhabitants, stood as a grim monument to the horrors that lurked within. The forest, once draped in the twilight of malevolence, seemed to whisper its gratitude, as if the very trees acknowledged the survivors' bravery in breaking the curse that had ensnared Blackwood Manor for generations. The mansion, once a beacon of dread, now stood silent, its secrets buried in the annals of a nightmarish history, and the echoes of the friends' screams lingering like ghosts in the shadows. The sun had barely risen, casting a golden hue on the exterior of Crestwood High School. The morning air buzzed with the usual energy as students chatted animatedly, their laughter echoing through the hallways. The atmosphere was filled with a sense of normalcy, the promise of another routine day. Little did they know that the sunlit corridors would soon become the stage for a horrifying ordeal that would be etched into their memories forever. As the morning progressed, the routine was shattered by an alarming announcement that sent shockwaves through the school. Principal Henderson's voice, usually calm and reassuring, quivered over the intercom. "Attention, students. This is Principal Henderson. We are under a Code Red lockdown. I repeat, Code Red. Please follow all lockdown procedures immediately." Panic gripped the building like a vice. Students, guided by teachers, hurriedly shuffled into classrooms, the urgency palpable in their movements. Outside, the world seemed to come to a standstill, a surreal quiet settling over the school. In one particular classroom, a sense of foreboding hung thick in the air. The muffled cries of frightened students seeped through the closed door as they huddled together, their eyes wide with terror. The circus melody, now warped into a haunting soundtrack, played relentlessly over the intercom, intensifying the sense of dread. The haunting tune, however, was a mere prelude to the nightmarish scene that would unfold. The sound of footsteps approached, a heavy echo that reverberated through the hallway. Suddenly, a tall figure loomed outside the door, ominous and foreboding. The students held their breath, their faces contorted in a mixture of terror and disbelief. The tall man paused for a moment, casting a chilling silhouette against the classroom door. Without warning, he forcefully barged in, wielding a gleaming knife that glinted malevolently in the dim light. The students' screams pierced the air as chaos erupted within the confines of the room. The menacing figure, masked and devoid of emotion, began his gruesome assault. Panic and horror unfolded as the students, trapped and defenseless, cried out in despair. The tall intruder moved methodically, his actions fueled by an insidious purpose. The room, once filled with the laughter of students, was now a chamber of nightmarish echoes. Blood splattered across the walls, vivid crimson against the sterile backdrop of the classroom. The students, overwhelmed by fear, put their hands over their mouths to stifle their cries, their eyes reflecting a mixture of disbelief and agony. The atmosphere inside the room became a grotesque tableau of pain and terror, each cry echoing in the minds of those who witnessed the horror. Amidst the carnage, a lone student, fueled by adrenaline and desperation, managed to slip away unnoticed. With every nerve on edge, he fled the room, making his way to the nearest bathroom. There, he cowered in silence, the sounds of the ongoing horror echoing through the walls. Outside the bathroom sanctuary, the cries of anguish continued. The intermingling symphony of screams, gasps, and desperate pleas painted a portrait of sheer terror. The circus melody played on, now a twisted backdrop to the nightmare that unfolded within Crestwood High. It was only when the distant wail of police sirens cut through the air that the atmosphere began to shift. The tall intruder, realizing that his reign of terror was coming to an end, retreated into the shadows. The police, armed and resolute, stormed the building, capturing the assailant and bringing an end to the harrowing nightmare. In the aftermath, Crestwood High became a haunting testament to the fragility of safety. The survivors, forever scarred by the echoes of terror, grappled with the trauma of that fateful day. The halls, once filled with the laughter of students, were now stained with the indelible imprint of tragedy, a stark reminder that even in the sanctuaries of education, the specter of darkness could emerge to shatter lives. In the heart of an old town, surrounded by twisted trees and shadowy alleys, Tom found himself alone in his family's creaking Victorian house. His parents had embarked on a sudden business trip, leaving him to fend for himself. The empty rooms echoed with the distant memories of laughter, now replaced by an unsettling silence that seemed to grow thicker with each passing hour. Eager to stave off the encroaching loneliness, Tom indulged in a night of solitude. The air was heavy with the scent of pizza, and the glow of the television cast an otherworldly ambience across the living room. The flickering light danced on the walls, creating grotesque shadows that seemed to reach out for him. As the night wore on, Tom's immersion in video games became a desperate attempt to escape the eerie atmosphere that hung in the air. The distant hooting of an owl outside his window added to the sense of isolation, and a shiver ran down his spine as the clock struck midnight, abruptly ending his gaming session. Undeterred, Tom headed to the kitchen for a late-night snack, using his phone's dim glow to navigate the darkened house. The wind whispered through the cracks in the windows, and the creaking floorboards beneath his feet seemed to protest his every step. The shadows morphed into sinister shapes that watched him from the corners, and an inexplicable dread settled over him. With a reheated slice of pizza in hand, Tom decided to lock all the doors and windows before retreating to his room. The night outside seemed to grow colder, and the quiet became almost suffocating. Standing by the front door, he hesitated, feeling a strange compulsion to explore the dark mysteries that lurked beyond his home. It was then that a haunting melody drifted through the air, catching his attention. The ethereal notes of a harmonica echoed from the abandoned house next door. The eerie sound beckoned him, and against his better judgment, Tom followed its call. The shadows seemed to retreat, as if clearing a path for him towards the source of the melancholic melody. In the overgrown backyard of the forsaken house, Tom discovered the homeless man, shrouded in darkness, playing the harmonica with an otherworldly intensity. The music wove a tale of sorrow, and the man's sunken eyes seemed to hold secrets from a time long forgotten. Tom stood, captivated and disturbed, unable to tear his gaze away from the spectral figure. As the man rose, swaying towards him, Tom's fascination turned to terror. The homeless man's movements were disjointed, almost inhuman. Panic seized Tom as he sprinted back towards his house, the harmonica's haunting melody chasing him through the night. The wind carried whispers that seemed to mock him, promising a malevolent presence that lurked just beyond his awareness. Inside the safety of his home, Tom peered through the window, only to find the homeless man standing on his porch, staring at him with an unsettling grin. The whispers in the wind grew louder, and the man's guttural voice echoed, "You can't escape the night, Tom. I'll be waiting." The melody ceased, leaving Tom in a state of trembling fear. The night air hung heavy with an otherworldly presence, and as the first light of dawn broke, he wondered whether he had truly evaded the clutches of the mysterious figure, or merely postponed an inevitable encounter with the unknown that lingered in the shadows.